Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're having a bit of a fun conversation on the channel as we discuss how Pedro Kantor could have ended up the Imperial Fist Chapter Master. No real need for a spoiler warning today, so we can waste no time and just jump straight in. Okay, so obviously the Crimson Fists are a successor chapter of the Imperial Fists, one of the prestigious second founding. They've of course gone on to carve out their very own iconic identity, arguably the most famous of all the successor chapters, or at least in my opinion in the conversation with the Black Templars, a fellow Sons of Dorn successor to boot. And it is Pedro Kantor who is undoubtedly the face that represents the chapter the best. The man who led his chapter through the Rindsweld disaster, keeping his chapter alive through sheer grit and determination alone. And so with Kantor so ingrained and iconic to his chapter, so integral to its survival, how could he possibly have ended up as the Imperial Fist Chapter Master? Regardless of being a Son of Dorn, your chapter is your chapter. You don't and can't change it. And well, the seeds of the answer comes from a conversation we had last week regarding the aftermath of the Orc invasion of Rindsweld. Though the Crimson Fists survived, they were broken as a chapter, on the brink of extinction. So close in fact, that Kantor had to desperately send a delegation racing to Terra as soon as the reinforcement fleet departed his homeworld, to plead their case to the High Lords of Terra themselves, to not dissolve the chapter, placing all his hopes in the hands of his chief librarian Diguero and the famous Captain Cortez, that they could argue the chapter's case enough, prove that they could still fight and provide a service to the Imperium, despite their normally unrecoverable losses. And it was in this perilous time of dubious survival that the Imperial Fists made the offer to Kantor to absorb the remnants of the Crimson Fist chapter into their own, to which Kantor declined. However, what if he hadn't? What if Kantor had accepted? What if he saw the writing on the wall and did what he had to do to save the lives of his men, to safeguard their future? How would that have affected the events that we know would have come after? Well, we don't quite know how the Imperial Fists would have integrated the Crimson Fist survivors into their chapter, but given the extremely low numbers of them, highly likely to not be much more than 100, even with the 25 surviving Marines who were not on Rindsweld during the Orc invasion, I don't think it would have affected the Codex Astartes mandates in any major way. General chapter losses probably meant that that was why the Imperial Fists made the offer in the first place, because it was an acceptable influx of numbers to them. There's a possibility the Crimson Fists would have been dispersed across all the companies, in the hopes of an easier and quicker integration as Imperial Fists. But I also think in respect to Kantor as a chapter master, he would have been definitely made a company captain, with most likely a reorganisation of men to enable the Crimson Fists to be their own company under his command. But either way, at a minimum, Kantor would have definitely been a captain. And so imagine that, Pedro Kantor and the Crimson Fist survivors, now in the yellow of the old Legion. What a what-if story that could be. And assuming Kantor had indeed accepted this offer, and that he was now a captain within the Imperial Fist chapter, he would have been an active and important part of the chapter, with the fall of Cadia and the opening of the Great Rift. An important time for the Imperial Fists chapter. Not only was the phalanx called to Cadia, assisting in its final moments, but members of the chapter were also present upon the throne world in the aftermath, during the battle for Lion's Gate, in their role as Sentinels of Terror, and they played an important part in the returned Guilliman's quashing of the High Lord's rebellion, willing to go toe-to-toe against the Minotaur's chapter. And one of the most important things that transpired during all of this time, one of the things that is rarely spoken of in regards to the Imperial Fists, is that they lost their chapter master during this time too. Though we don't know exactly how it happened, Imperial Fist Chapter Master Vaughn Hagen died during the battle for Lion's Gate, fulfilling his duty as a true son of Dawn, laying his life down in defense of the Imperial Palace. He would be succeeded by Captain Gregor Decian of the 7th Company, who was away on a penance crusade along the Great Rift during this time, who returned to find not only his chapter master dead, but that he himself was now chapter master. But what if Kantor was an option? What if Kantor was within the Imperial Fist chapter, as a captain, having accepted their offer post-Rindsworld? Could he have been chosen in place of Decian? Well, you know me, I love me some Pedro Kantor, so I admit I am undoubtedly biased here. But I think it is a definite possibility. Kantor was hugely respected for his victory against the odds during the War for Rindsworld, for his ability as a commander, but as well as a leader, possessing an ability that did not escape the notice of the returned Primarch Roboute Guilliman, who would name and appoint Kantor as Praetor in Carmine, protector of the entire Loki sector. Essentially a smaller version of the burden he would place upon Dante as Warden of Imperium Nihilus. So that speaks highly to how strongly Guilliman respected Kantor. And had Kantor been a part of the Imperial Fists instead at this time, with Roboute Guilliman being present during the battle for Lion's Gate upon the throne world, when the Imperial Fist Chapter Master would fall, do we not think it's highly likely Guilliman wouldn't, at the very least, suggest Kantor as a more than worthy replacement? No, he wouldn't appoint him himself, as it's very much Rogal's bloodline, and Guilliman's keen to not get too involved. But I think it would definitely be within Guilliman's wheelhouse, so to speak, to make it clear who he thought it should be, who he thought was a worthy chapter master. And on that note, of course Pedro Kantor already was a chapter master, a man who not only knew what bearing that mantle and responsibility was like, experienced with it, but a man who had more than proven his ability in that role already, who had in this situation accepted the Imperial Fist offer to ensure his men beneath him survived, at the cost of his own position. I think the Imperial Fist Council would easily recognise what they had in Kantor, why they made the offer to him in the first place. And I don't think him being of the Crimson Fists would count against him either. Because as we said, the Crimson Fists were a second founding chapter, made from the original Imperial Fist Legion. And they aren't a chapter who greatly departed from the Legion's original nature either, a la say the Black Templars for example. And so honestly, had Kantor accepted that offer in the wake of the Orc invasion, I think there is a huge possibility that he would have ended up the Imperial Fist Chapter Master, as it turns out, in short order, due to the events that we know would transpire in the wake of the Great Rift. And how different might this turn of events have affected the wider galaxy were Kantor in command of the mighty phalanx and wearing the famous yellow instead of blue? As always everyone, what do you think? What do you think would have transpired had Kantor accepted the Imperial Fist's offer? With the death of the Imperial Fist Chapter Master at the Battle of Lion's Gate, do you think Pedro Kantor could have indeed become the new Imperial Fist Chapter Master? Would he have stood a great chance of assuming the role, especially with Captain Decian away on a penance crusade? Would his history as a Crimson Fist counted against him? And do you think Rabute Gilliman would have made his approval known? And if so, would that have affected the chapter's decision? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.